happen, Chuck. And then we'll just, hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the Weekend Projects Hangout on Air, powered by Radio Shack. Today we'll be talking about the Optical Tremolo project. Great weekend project made parts at Radio Shack. But today I'm joined by Sean Michael Reagan, technical editor for Make. Hey Sean, how's it going?
Good, Nick. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. And also a avid Make reader, Chuck, who's actually built and customized his own optical tremolo. How's it going, Chuck?
Good to be here.
Cool. So, Sean, how about you kind of explain the story of the optical tremolo? I hear it was basically it came up in a Make magazine, volume 15, as sort of like a theory. Wasn't really a project that was proposed, but sort of like a thought. And then you kind of ran with the idea. And can you explain about how Charles Platt kind of inspired the idea to begin with?
Absolutely. So so first, this is Make volume 16. Can you see it there? Yes. And we had a DIY musical instruments theme for that one. I'm not on staff at that time, but I was writing for the blog. This is one of my favorite issues, actually. And Charles Platt, of course, is one of our regular electronics contributors. And this is the article that he ran called Stomp Box Basics. And let me see if I can find yeah, there it is. The money shot there. It's this is where Charles proposes, but does not actually implement or suggest a circuit design for exactly what I ended up building, which is a guitar or musical instrument effects pedal that's modulated optically. You can see in the diagram here, there's a wheel. There's an encoder wheel that spins, and it has opaque portions and transparent portions, and a light shines through. And when it's opaque, when the wheel spins by and there's an opaque region, the light shines through onto a photoresistor, and that lowers the resistance of the photoresistor and shorts the audio signal to ground, which makes it quiet. So when it's clear, it's quiet, right? So this was just a proposed idea that Charles talked about here. He was talking about a lot of classic DIY tremolo and pedal effect circuit, and this was just kind of one he dropped in as a bonus. And our former editorial director, Gareth, came to me last year and asked if I could turn it, into a real thing for our 2013 Radio Shack campaign, and it did. And we did eventually publish it in Make volume 34 here.
So quite a while after Charles kind of first posed the idea, yeah.
We did, yes, several years actually, and it's too bad Charles couldn't be with us here today.
Yeah,
he would have a lot of interesting things to say about the way that I built this. And
yeah, I mean, he's kind of like one of the Make electronics gurus. He's got quite a few books out. I mean, comes to my mind is the Make electronics book, and then he's also got a new encyclopedia out for electronic components, one of like 3 volumes, and it's actually a great read for like if you're experienced or not. But I was also going to ask, and maybe can throw this to Chuck. I'm not very familiar with the tremolo and really what it does. I have no musical talents, and I do not play instruments, so. How does this come into effect? Like, why would you want to use a tremolo to begin with?
Well, it adds a dimension. It kind of gives that shimmer. So, it's a lot of like, your traditional Les Paul use tremolo effects, and to be able to do it in a way that you have control over, a lot of the traditional tremolo is just that wah 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 wah. Where with this, you can change the pattern. You can have a lot more control over it, and everyone I've showed it to really flips on it. Guitar players are really enthusiastic on it, and I actually have one I'm building somebody for Christmas. Yeah, people like that control aspect,
Yeah.
And so just to be sort of technically compulsive about it, right? Tremolo really means a variation in volume, right? So
okay.
You have a constant level signal, and when you're modulating the volume up and down in a regular way, that's tremolo. There are lots of different possible effects, so you have to sort of be precise about your terms, I think.
Yeah.
So, Sean, do you have an example for us that you could you could play?
I do.
Before we show Chuck's kind of modified version.
I will not subject you to very much of my guitar playing, but I do have an example here. Let's see. First off, let's start with the box. You can see the box, right?
Got the box.
Okay. So this is the switch, and the first thing we do is we turn on the light, which we need because it's an optical process, and this wheel goes around.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see. I have another encoder wheel as an example. You probably see it here.
A little up.
Up. There, sorry, there.
There you go. Nice.
You can see it, right? That's like what's on here. And it goes around, and that modulates the signal. So let me turn it on. and adjust it the speed that I want.
Okay.
And hopefully you can hear this through my headset mic. Can y'all hear that?
Yeah.
You can change the speed. And you can speed it up until it's almost a buzz.
And then Sean, that effect is just one disc. You can actually customize the discs yourself. We provide some instructions, and then you can also just start kind of changing the black and white patterns on sort of like the transparent discs. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. Now this, and they're just on there. They're just on there with Velcro.
Okay.
You can see. So, and that one you just heard was it's just like binary, right? It's like a square wave. Like one half is black. I don't know if you see that or not. One half is black, one half is clear. So it's just like a chopper, straight up and down.
Okay.
We included several others, like this one that I already showed, that has like a kind of a gradual crescent moon fade. This one you can't tell the difference, but this one actually encodes the SOS, the Morse code for SOS.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But you can't hear it. But I thought it was a cool sort of gimmick. Interestingly, this was built for our Radio Shack campaign in 2013, and I think Radio Shack's going to let us go back and do version 2.0 for 2040, which I'm pretty excited about.
Very cool.
Because once you build a thing, you always want to make it better the next time around. So.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great segue into kind of what Chuck. Chuck, can you show us your optical tremolo and kind of talk about how you modified it? We're actually getting a couple questions from some viewers as to how you could turn it into a stomp box, which in your video on Vimeo you kind of talked about. So maybe at the end, kind of mention that as well, the next stage of its evolution.
All right, yeah, this is my version, and I used a heavier box. This is a electronic junction box from Home Depot. Unfortunately, I got mine to set it up today, and it's not working, so that's what happens.
That's how it works in my demo.
Where's my sad trombone noise? I can't hear it right now. Yeah. Thank you.
It's Murphy's Law. It's always go wrong when you're ready to show somebody.
Yep.
I use the hub from an old Discman CD player. This allows me to use the blank discs. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, all my audio just died here. I use the blank discs from the end of the CD spindle.
Okay.
And they snap right in. I can do the pattern in paper, tape, whatever. And this allows you to switch out quickly, try a bunch of different stuff, and it's a pretty ubiquitous material that otherwise ends up in the trash. And that's a big thing with me is recycling. So it seemed like the next logical step was if you have something that you could easily switch out. And also I can eliminate the reverse by flipping it over. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea.
I don't have to have a reverse gear. I can just boom physically.
Good analog solution to an electronics problem, right?
Yeah, you don't have to have the DP-DT switch. I'll tell you a little secret, which is that I went into Radio Shack and I really liked the way this switch looked.
Oh, yeah?
Which is one of the reasons the project, and I was like, oh, you can run both ways, and we'll sell that as a feature. But I like the center off and the fantastic like red panel that it has. Yeah.
And on that same point, that's I really like the retro knobs for the way they look. So I end up anybody with a broken mixing desk or anything ends up on my porch and it gets taken apart and knobs, pots, everything.
I share that obsession with old knobs. Like I have a huge drawer full of I tear them off of anything I can find.
Yeah, anything you buy commercially today just isn't quite the same. Another mod I made on mine was the light. This is a Romex copper home wiring inside, just one strand, and it's a piece of rope and parts from pins. So it's kind of I've controlled other synthesizers and noisemakers and stuff with a similar thing with this flexible arm. And there again, it's recycling. It's a bunch of junk that was laying around the shop anyway, rather than going and spending money.
That's very cool. I'd actually thought about using the CD's spindle material in a future build. That's really interesting.
Yeah, they snap in right away, and you have like that solid connection. Whereas the project right now at least uses like the Velcro in the center, and then you can't, like Chuck was saying, you can't rotate it, you can't flip over the CD. that same way.
Yeah, that's extremely clever. I may have to, yeah, gonna have to steal that one from you. With due credit, of course, Chuck.
And the CD also gives it better balance at a higher speed. It's going to turn nicer. So the first one I experimented with, I just used a disc of regular transparency, and it was kind of floppy and noisy a bit. So this kind of cleans up the design all around.
And I really like the enclosure box. I mean, there's tons of space to modify, and it's really robust, you know? I've actually thought a couple times I'll go into the hardware store and getting kind of like one of those, like, it's almost like a waterproof box, isn't it? It's for like irrigation or like electronics, like conduit.
It's for electronics outside, and it's called a wet box. And yeah, it's got a, open it up here, and you see it's got a heavy neoprene gasket along the inside, and it screws, the lid screws on tight. So yeah, for electronics enclosures, they're nice and heavy duty. They're a little expensive, but for the robustness of it, it's worth it in applications, you know.
Yeah, I used one of those for a sous vide controller, like a water bath temperature controller build once. Yeah. I love that case. And
so Chuck, someone's asking, let's see, how could you turn this into like an interface with a stomp pedal? I think you mentioned that in the video that we posted on the Make Scene blog as a future kind of modification to be able to adapt. Do you have any ideas for how you could do that?
With this being kind of a fragile thing, you know, you don't want to put a lot of abuse on it. But I think a breakout switch, a breakout foot switch that you can control it with would definitely be nice, and also a foot pedal. If you could hook it up like a wah pedal where you could actually control your speed and the rate of rotation with one foot, you know, while you're playing, you get a whole new range of possibilities out of the instrument. And this is a good launching off project. I have another unit that I unfortunately don't have with me right now that I build analog synth circuits, and I was trying to figure out ways to make them interact and change over time and kind of random music. So I built something, instead of using a fast motor, I used a clock motor and a round piece of X-ray film, and as it rotates slowly, it was changing different parameters of the synth circuit, pitch, modification, all that, and it's the seed of something that's going to be really interesting one day. It's just this, you know, if they're turning at different speeds, you've always got different combinations of tone, speed, rhythms. You know, it's a generative music basically. And it all kind of evolved from this project. You know, it's a similar idea of the LED and the photoresistor with a transparency rotating, except this was more of organic changes of the X-ray film. So, you know, my ribs sound really cool.
I bet they do. You know what? When I first saw you, I thought, I bet his ribs sound great.
So then another question we're getting is, can you use the optical tremolo with just a guitar? Can you adapt this? Someone's asking for a violin. I mean, or is it just for a single instrument, just the guitar itself? Can you?
No, I mean it's got quarter-inch, you know, it's got quarter-inch mono audio jacks on both sides, in and out. So anything, it's pretty much any audio signal you put in one side, you can modulate with this and get out the other.
So as long as you have an input coming into the system, it just modulates that output.
Yeah, you could literally use it on anything.
Yeah, cool. How about when they're we're getting a bunch of great questions actually. How about for Chuck? You mentioned also that the less opaque color on the disc, does that affect the sound or the effect that you're getting? I saw you were using, I believe it was tape that you use for fixing like a tail light, and it had a certain red opaque color to it. It wasn't quite. Yeah, that one. How does that kind of...
It's interesting because it kind of fades in a step. I also did this one, which is spray paint and aluminum tape here. So it's got a serious block, and then it kind of fades in with the spray paint as it rotates. I don't know if you can see that with my black shirt, but yeah, as you rotate it fades in and out. And I think I would combine this with actually printing on transparency, and you can get a lot of really intricate effects if you have the control of actually printing a transparency and then adhering it to these blank discs from the CD spindle.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that if we get to redesign this project for 2014, that we can design it to work off reflected rather than transmitted light. So, for instance, you could just print these instead of on a clear substrate, you could print them just on white, you know, and the circuit would operate from the light that was bounced off the white versus the light that was bounced off the black. like kind of like the principle of a line following robot, you know.
If you made it like a mirror ball, you'd get like a nice chaotic, you know.
That would be really cool. That would be really cool. When I published this project, I thought, well, it's cool, but the transparencies are kind of the bottleneck. They're not really easy to find. You know, it would be cool if people could just print on paper.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, Sean, these are some of the, here's a screenshot at least of some of the optical tremolo, kind of like the discs that we kind of provided with the project. Can you talk any bit about sort of like the effects you'd get, or is it just you have to experiment with whatever the input sound is? Or can you kind of predict what's going to happen based upon the pattern?
Oh, since it's just a straight-up amplitude modulation, you can pretty much, you know, if you think about how they're going to turn, you can imagine how they would sound. In fact, I'm hopeful in the second version of this box, we're going to put a pulse width modulation motor, a proper motor speed controller in it so that you can really get down to the low speeds you need to appreciate the more complex effects. Right now, you kind of get like, you can tell that it's going up and down, but if you start to get more nuanced, like with the SOS thing that I tried, like you really can't make it run slow enough to really appreciate that effect. So the gradient one sounds pretty cool. You can tell that one, but a lot of the rest of it was just, you know, you can sort of tell up and down.
And Chuck, have you, I know in your video you also mentioned kind of the PWM idea. Have you gotten any farther with that? Or sounds like you guys are talking about the same kind of like 2.0 version already.
Yeah, totally. For 2.0, I want it to run, I want you to be able to use plain paper discs. I want to include a PWM speed controller, and I want it to run in 9 volts, because the whole like universe of guitar effect pedals runs at 9 volts. So.
Yeah, and there's definitely the pulse width modulator would make the whole thing, because like he says, to slow it down, it also gives you a higher resolution. So the slower it's going, the more change you can affect, the more detail you get. You can get a lot. It's kind of hard to explain, but figure like, you know, this turns one time. That's like, the faster it turns, the less detail you can get. The shorter time it takes in the course of whatever. And there again, I'm thinking more in terms of long-term affecting synthesizers, affecting generative music, you know. So to be able to slow something like this down quite a bit gives you a whole another use.
Yeah, and the trade-off, of course, is that if you want to build this from scratch and you want to include a proper motor speed controller, it's more complicated to build.
Yeah.
And the reason this device runs at 3 volts is because you can get away with the sort of cheap-ass speed controller that I included, which is just a pot, a series pot, right? If you tried to do that at 9 volts, like your potentiometer would melt when you turned it down real slow, because it'd be absorbing all this heat trying to slow it down. So look out for version 2.0.
So I was actually curious. The video I just watched before the Hangout, actually, it's really detailed and really awesome. I was just curious, Sean, when you're picking the parts, obviously you can get them all at Radio Shack and the enclosure. If you're not going to go the crazy robust way that Chuck did, but what is the difference between the rheostat, which looks just like the potentiometer?
That's a good question, and you put me on the spot. I'm not sure I can tell you off the top of my head.
Oh, no!
So I want to say one of them, so if I remember correctly, one of these is a lot more resistive than the other, and the tapers may be different, but it's been a while since I brushed up on it. He said what exactly a rheostat was versus what exactly a potentiometer was. They're real similar. So if anybody in the audience wants to chastise me with the proper answer,
I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. You know.
You can feel it when you turn it. Like the inside of the rheostat feels like it's a winding almost, whereas a pod is just kind of smooth.
Is that how it works? Like a rheostat? Maybe that's it. A rheostat has a coil, whereas a pod has a slider. A pod has a slider.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. That may be it, but I would have to look it up to know for sure. I'm sorry.
But I can attest to them getting hot. I've actually melted things hooking them up wrong with rheostats. So.
Yeah.
So watch out when you're building the circuit. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, if you run it at 3 volts, you're probably not gonna melt much of anything.
I was at higher voltage.
Yeah.
But they heat up.
So on that note, Chuck, thank you so much for joining us for the Weekend Projects Hangout on Air. Sean, thank you again.
No, it's always a pleasure.
We'll be having the next one next week, so be sure to tune in for the Weekend Projects Hangout on Air, powered by Radio Shack. And please check out the project page. There's an awesome video for the details. And if you know the answer to that rheostat question, post it and let us know. All right, thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Sean.
Right on.